Welcome back to Man the Helm podcast. Today I am graced once again by the presence of Mr. Richard Oliver, aka the British King of Fuzz, man of many hats, whatever you want to call him. Richard Oliver is back on the show. How's it going, sir?
Oh, thank you very much for the kind introduction. It's going. It's going.
Yeah.
Let's just say it's going.
Yeah.
It's moving. Whatever it is, it's moving constantly. No, I'm pretty good, Jake, and happy to be back again. It seems like only yesterday, but I think it was a little bit a little bit longer than that, right?
I think we've shot for like an annual thing, I
Okay.
think that's kind of where we're at right now, somewhere along that lines, Try to do it at least once a year, get an
Okay.
update from you guys.
Like pretty much all of my relations, I'm just going to let you know. So
Hey.
you are in the same standing as a lot of my very close relations.
Well, I mean that's kind of how the world works these days, especially with people,
Right.
across in different countries, across oceans and all that. You kind of got to make up when you can.
I do work across 3 different time zones. I'm used
Yeah.
to being
Yeah.
up all the time. Not a problem.
Yeah. Well, I had some cool stuff happen, and you've had some really cool stuff happen. I kind of wanted to start this off with like getting to see your guitar heroes and kind of like what that experience is. I know people poke fun at you in the Chasing Tone podcast about
Just a
saying
bit.
David Gilmour too much, but that's a once in a lifetime opportunity to see a gentleman like that of that caliber. And you've gotten to see him how many times now?
It's the 3rd time I've seen him.
Okay,
First,
yeah.
first time, so I've seen... Again, I went through a whole period where I wasn't really watching live music.
Yeah.
And that, I probably came out of that just after he and Roger Waters had ended their sort of early noughties tours. I think they both toured around 2007-ish, and I missed those tours. And I was never cool enough to see, like, Pink Floyd when they did the Division Bell tour. I was
Sure.
too busy, trying to go to clubs and get drunk and, all the normal stuff that teenagers do, and well, teenagers up until their 30s, let's just say.
Well, yeah.
So I missed out on all of that, but then in 2015, when he did the Rattle That Lock tour, I went to the 2015 tour at the Royal Albert Hall, took my wife and daughter, Anna and Leela, and we were at the top, and he was very far away. We had, like, probably the furthest away tickets. We were central,
Sure.
at the top, but the laser show was fantastic. So
Yeah.
that was amazing. But then the following year, my friend Doug, who is an ex-radio presenter
Okay.
from Philadelphia, I believe, and came over to the UK and lives over here, but is one of the most American people I know. Has a Winnebago, has had a Harley, has a pinball machine, has a Gibson Les Paul, but doesn't play it. So he is a very American fella. And he got tickets to the Albert Hall for the 2016 show, and we were in like row 6. And
Oh, wow.
that was insane. I could see the dirt under Gilmour's fingernails. I could see everything he did, and it was wild. That was one hell of an experience. But this one was like extra special for totally different reasons. Firstly, I didn't think I was going to see this tour because the tickets sold out straight away, and like at £280 a ticket, and then some. So I was like, oh, I'm not going to be able to stretch to £300 per ticket, and oh look, they've already all sold out. And then they're on the secondary market. Like, just to compare, the row 6 seat that I had last time is going for like £4,000, like $5,000 at the moment in the secondary market, right?
Yeah.
And like, I'm sure someone will pay for that,
Oh,
or
absolutely.
it will drop right at the last minute. But
Yeah.
that's huge money, and I paid nowhere near that. So I thought I'd blown it this time, and I was convincing myself that it didn't matter because I'd seen him twice in the last tour, and he was several years younger at that point, so in his prime a little more, perhaps, all of that good stuff. And I'd convinced myself of this, and I'd bought the new album, and I was like, there are 4 really great tracks on that album, to my mind. And
I haven't
then
heard it yet.
No, and it isn't for everybody.
Sure.
And then there's like 5 other like okay to good tracks, but even those have started to sink in and hook me. And every one of them's got a little Gilmour solo in it, and he doesn't disappoint. He just does not disappoint. So as things sort of went on and I was feeling more and more like, oh, I really wish I could have gone, it popped up on his page. If you buy the Gilmour album off his website, you get a chance to go to the dress rehearsal in Brighton, which is an hour and a half's train ride from me, and only 1,500 people were being given the invite for tickets per day for 2 days. So he did 2 shows.
Yeah.
Friday the 20th, which was like a regular-ish time, 6 o'clock, I think, at night, a little early. And then we went to the Saturday matinee at 3 in the afternoon, which was wild. But it was an incredibly emotional experience. And what was really emotional for me was my wife felt the same. She saw him in 2015. She is obviously not as massive a fan as I am.
Sure, yeah.
But I didn't prime her very much. I played some of the new album, but I hadn't reminded her that he was the guy who sings and wrote most of Wish You Were Here and songs like that, which are obviously like big numbers. So when those came up, she was really pleasantly surprised. But dude, I was so wrong about him. Like, he is 78. He can play the guitar like nobody else.
Yeah.
Like, he is able to make that guitar sing in a way where I can immediately go, that's Dave Gilmour playing.
Yeah.
And he does things that I didn't expect him to do. And I was blown away. I was like, and Anna, again, is used to me whittering on about guitars and pedals. And she was like, he is naturally one of the most amazing guitar players I've ever seen. And she's seen some good ones. So, dude, I was stoked. I was beyond happy. Sadly, having spent 2 episodes talking about it on Chasing Tone, I felt when we recorded last night that I shouldn't talk any more about it.
Yeah.
So I left it all to the end and mentioned it a bit, but we did have a very funny, I don't know if you've heard the latest episode, but in the introduction, I think we managed to say, because I said, I'm not going to mention Gilmour, I'll say other things. I had about 30 or 40 Pink Floyd songs just into the opening crawl.
Yeah.
Amazing.
I do like, though, that you guys are doing that new format, man, because you're not a week behind anymore. I'm sure it's a little...
It's hard.
Yeah, I was going to say, I'm sure it's hard to do that, but it keeps things relevant. I mean, as long as you guys can, all 3 of you can manage that, I mean, I think that's the way to go, if you can.
It's definitely got some challenges, and it's definitely creating some challenges, but I don't see us giving it up anytime soon, because once you're in it, you may as well run with it. And it is good, because, you know, the Octasci from Keeley was officially launched yesterday,
right.
And although, to be honest, we'd all seen it before, we weren't able to talk about it, and naturally yesterday we were, so we were able to mention that, and it's real-time reaction, and it's also good to be able to put stuff up on the Tone group and ask questions and answer them the same day. That was pretty fun. That worked out well. So yeah, good. I'm glad that's appreciated. But yes, it does mean that I have less time to plan, and as a result, you just get the Gilmour rantings.
Well, and I mean, to be fair, though, I mean, that's kind of what, at least as a fan myself, that's kind of what I'm listening to the show for. I'm not listening to like a pre-planned, like, and now we ask this question, and now we talk about this specific thing. Like, yeah, there's good points to have like show notes just to kind of go off so you guys don't go completely off the rails. But, you know, it's good to have that ad lib, you know, kind of almost improvisational conversation.
100%. We do write, like, I mean, you've probably seen it, but we write like a page of notes before the show, which are like links to subjects. Invariably, we get about a third of the way through them before we completely go off into the weeds on something else. And then we're like, oh crap, we've got to mention these 10 other things before we end. But that's part of the fun of it all. And we have a good time. It's very hard to keep a show like that, you know, fresh at all times.
For sure.
And, you know, there are times where we think, oh, should we have done that? Or was that a bit too silly? But, you know, we're all learning our way in this world. So I think our listeners forgive us for our mistakes.
Well, and the people, just like you said with like guitarists and musicians that you can uniquely tell when you hear them play. The reason why you can do that, and the reason why people that are successful, I believe, in this industry is they are unabashedly themselves. You know, they're not trying to be something else. They're not trying to stick to like a thing. You know what I mean? They're not trying to copy anything. They're just doing what they like to do. And that's the authenticity that everybody likes from musicians, creatives, regardless of what the art is. You know what I mean? That's what people like to see. So when they see you guys kind of going off the rails a little bit, that's really what we're tuning into. You know what I mean? I can get online and check out the new Keeler release. I don't need to, listen to a podcast to know that a new pedal got released,
No, and it obviously we need a structure to hang on, but it is true. It's about the authentic conversation. Like I say, everything is pretty off the cuff. Sometimes we go too far too. Sometimes I deliberately try to wind Brian up and say the most outrageous things to him sometimes, and he never reacts in the way that I want him to. So I keep having to try harder, but that's the fun of it. So it's hard because again, it's a lot of work, as you know. Doing a podcast, we don't make a lot of money from it. What we make from it does not cover the time we spend on it, for sure.
Sure. Yeah.
But it isn't about that. It's actually about like being yourself 100%, as you say, because I've been in so many jobs, and I'm sure you have, where you can't be yourself, where you're expected to be a certain way. In fact, I was talking about this probably on the Patreon. In my last job, I spent a fortune on fancy Italian suits and shoes that I'll never wear again, except at weddings and other family gatherings, because that was part of who I was, but it wasn't who I am. Who I am is band shirt wearing. Oh, I've got my special America hat to wear as well. That's very important.
Your trip to Martinsville, you need to make sure that's in the bag.
I've also got this one. This one, I think this one's rarer because I think that's
there you go,
a gas station out
there.
Again, we've been blessed, and I've been blessed by listeners who've sent me gifts, including funny hats and the most amazing spices and hot sauces. Tonight, I had fajitas, which I'd used a lime pepper rub that I'd got from a really nice guy out there, and also some fajita mix that I'd got from the same guy, and some like Spanish rice seasoning that he sent me, and the whole thing was amazing. And it was all spiced from Texas direct. So
okay, hey,
I love it. Yeah. It's been fantastic. So look, I love being me, and I love being unashamedly me, and I apologise to everyone that feels that listening to that is making them less intelligent.
They'll get over it. They'll get over
hopefully.
it. Yeah. Who cares at the end of the day? Well, that's the thing. Like I went to the woodshed, and that was one of the biggest things that all of the artists were talking about. Everybody, not everybody, I don't want to generalize. There were a lot of other people there that were asking about, like, how do you do this? How do you get this tone? How do you get, like, okay, there's some things that we can be very analytical about, and we can talk about technique and stuff like that. But there's that thing, and what I think captures it best is this phrase of a musical statement that all of these gentlemen or ladies have that we think about, is they're being themselves on the instrument. Like they're taking, and they're still standing on the shoulders of those giants of, the players of old, whatever you want to call them. But they're taking it and refining it into their own self. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. That was the biggest takeaway there. Now, don't get me wrong, seeing everybody getting up on stage and shred and play a few of their original tunes and then everybody jamming together was absolutely phenomenal. But those one-on-one conversations where it's just like, dude, just that was the overarching theme. It's like, dude, just be yourself, man. Who cares if you can do this or that, or
I'm very jealous of you. I'm going to put that out there right now because I'd love to woodshed. It will happen. So you went the last one that's just happened, right?
Yep.
So Tom Quayle was there?
Tom Quayle was there.
He's awesome. He's so cool. He's a really nice guy. And of course, Andy it must have been awesome as well for you to hang with Andy because of the amount of time you've put in to learning his awesome tunes.
Yeah, it was definitely an experience within itself that just talking and hanging out with him regardless of the other people.
I mean, they are two of my favourite people on this planet. I'll just tell you that now. So, I mean, they're awesome dudes, both of them. Andy is so good to hang with. He's a lot of fun.
Well, even like the, I guess if you want to call it a phrase of like the legacy players, you know, the Brent Masons and the Andy Timmons and, you know, Steve Morris and stuff like that. Like just talking to those guys, and it's like, I don't know why we do this, but everybody I think does to some level of thinking they're not like people. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
It's a weird thing that we have, but then, you know, realizing that, you know, these guys are just as cool to hang out with as it is to watch them play their instrument. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That's the biggest thing too. And of course, you know, there were other people there like Ben Eller, and I met an awesome guy named Daniel Kimbrough. He was the musical director for the whole thing, was playing bass. Phenomenal musicians. Like everybody that was involved in that. Like that's the level of musicianship that I aspire to, you know?
Yeah. No, I mean, they are all like utter pros at that thing.
Yeah.
Again, I cannot express how envious I was. Like you, a couple of other friends went, and I was like, I've got to do it. So at some point I will, but not this year. But and did you get to play with Andy?
A little bit. There were limited times, and it was a blessing in disguise. So they
yeah, it's a nervous thing to do to play with Andy Wood.
Well, sure. No. I wasn't so worried about that. That just is what it is. I've come to terms with my playing ability a long time ago, so it's
10 times better than my playing ability too. For what?
Well, it's all relative, you know. But I appreciate that. But the credit card that I used had my mother's name on it.
Okay.
So they booked me as Mary Young.
Excellent.
So when I showed up, they put me in the cabin with the handful of other women that were at the camp.
Oh, all by accident. Sure.
I know, right? So anyway, I was off site. They put me up at a hotel, which I was very grateful for. But at first it was kind of like, oh man. I mean, it was only 10 minutes down the road, so it wasn't that big of a deal. But, you know, I had to kind of...
That kind of makes the whole thing better, actually. That's a great story for a start.
Well...
Plus, now I'm going to call you Mary.
Hey, that's fine. That's all good. I've been called a lot worse, Richard. I think I'll be okay with Mary. But no, it was good. I brought a handful of guitars. I brought some honey picks from Rick and showed them off to some of the other guys. And you know, I saw a lot of gearboxes there that were being signed by Andy. So
that's lovely.
Yeah,
that is lovely.
Yeah,
I'm trying to convince Brian at the moment to do a special edition gearbox.
I would buy one immediately if you did.
Could you send this clip to Brian? Because what I was thinking is, look, we all know that the orange is not the most legible font colour on the orange case. I was thinking, why not do a black version with like high visibility text? Just completely blacked out, high visibility text. And we call it the orange on black or whatever.
Yeah.
But just as a special edition, and then also it fixes the problem for anyone that actually that is a problem. It isn't really a problem because there's only 5 knobs on that side.
Right.
And it's really easy to remember what they do because we always lay our pedals out in the same way. However, I also think it'd be a kind of fun thing to do and be nice to do a special edition of that pedal because that's one of the... I've got it on 2 pedal boards. That's one of the greatest pedals Wampler pedals have ever made, in my opinion.
For me, it is the greatest pedal so far that you guys have made. I have not... I've told this to everybody that asks about... I was playing with a guitar player. He was asking how my signal was so quiet. I was like, dude, it's all the gearbox. It never leaves whatever board I am taking out. That is the first thing that goes on the board because I know everything is going to be just fine regardless of what gig.
The lot. Yeah, it's so good. I mean, yes, we all like to have 15 different types of overdrive, well, at least I do, on a pedal board, but like when you have to boil it down, you want a nice throaty overdrive and you want a squealing distortion and all of the sounds you can get in between. And hey, let's also throw a noise gate on that distortion as well. It's so flexible. Lets you do so much. So yeah, it's the heart of my my band rig for sure. I love it. It's such a good pedal. So I think it's worth having a special edition just, for those of us, me included, that have it on multiple boards and want a different look to it.
Maybe I'll hit him up with like some of the questions like we had for the infamous germanium tumnus. Be like, hey, what's your PayPal? I'll just go ahead and send you this. Just make me one of these real quick. You know what I mean? I will give you the money right now.
We don't talk about the germanium tumnus much anymore. That was a fun period. Crazy.
I mean, I get it. I do to a certain extent, but at the same time, I just don't. I don't understand. I don't want to keep kicking a dead horse on it, but it still blows me away every time. I peruse through Reverb, and just the other night, I was like, I wonder what those are still sitting at. It's like, yeah, they're still sitting ridiculous. Yeah,
are they really?
It's stupid. Not as bad as it was at that initial thing, but it's ridiculous.
I mean, they are limited. There will never be any more of them being made of that type. We just won't ever do that. It's just not worth all the hassle and production work and support work and everything else for something we can't get hold of easily and, replace if there's a problem. So it came with its own headaches. But it's a cool pedal. Sounds great. Both of them sound great. In fact, I think the Deluxe actually came out a little bit better sounding for me than the regular versus the silicon variants. I think something about that Deluxe circuit and the germanium actually had a little bit of extra sauce to it. I can't put my finger on it, but I really enjoyed that. But yeah, we have no more diodes, so we shall make no more.
Well, I will say the Germanium Deluxe is on my main board right now. So
yeah,
I mean,
it's a very, very, very good pedal. If we could have made a germanium gearbox, then we would have done, I think, as well. But
well, I mean, I think a special edition is a lot more viable and a lot more buyer friendly.
Yeah, I think so. We don't have to do anything to the price. We don't,
Right.
we can just do it as a limited, maybe I'd say a Halloween run, but we're probably a little late for that now.
Yeah, you guys would have to really put
You
put
say
everything
that.
else on the back
We can
burner,
move
but-
quickly. We can.
No,
move
I'm
quickly,
not saying you can't.
but we do have another pedal coming out in about a month's time.
Oh, cool. Yeah.
So,
I mean,
actually two, but that's another story.
well, it's all right. We can talk offline about that if we want to talk about that. But no, because you guys are very, very regular on your releases and stuff like that. So I mean,
I'm glad that's what we were talking about. I said I have a lot of high fiber in my diet, but
you and Brian are both getting pretty older.
Thanks for reminding me.
Hey, I'm not being disrespectful. I'm just stating the obvious. It happens
lovely.
to the best of us.
It's lovely getting older. You care so much less about anything.
That's true.
I've almost reached the point where I will just I had a client say to me the other day, "Do you want to do this?" I was like, "I have no desire to do that. You may find somebody else to do that. It's fine."
Yeah.
Whereas 10 years ago, I'd be like, "I'll take his money. I'll just pretend I like it." But yeah, we are trying to release pedals with a greater regularity. We're trying to get one every couple of months rather than one every 3 months, knowing that one every couple of months may slip to one every 3 months, because one every 3 months probably slip to one every 4 months sometimes.
Right. Yeah, it's better to be a little more ambitious on that goal.
It is. But we've been working on some really big projects for us. Mm-hmm. The next pedal that comes out is the most complex pedal we've ever made, bar none, end of. There might be a more complex one on its way, but I'm just saying this is the one that to date, wow, so much work has gone into it, and literal blood, sweat and tears. So
you heard it here first. Richard has finally convinced Brian to make a MIDI controller.
Well, it's funny you mention that, because there is something, I'm just saying, there is something, I'll show it to you later offline.
No,
that's something that's gonna surprise a few people for sure. But no, I haven't managed to convince him to make anything of the sort.
I mean, I'm honestly shocked with pedals like, the Pantheon Dual Overdrive that you guys had, MIDI capability in that, if I'm being honest, with his disdain for it,
Yeah, I mean, we were dipping our toes in the water a bit there. We've sort of found our way around, and we understand what we want to do with MIDI. Mm-hmm. And I think the reality is is MIDI in any gain pedal will only really be good when it can control like the pots properly.
Sure.
And the analog, so you have an analog circuit with digital pots, but those digital pots are good enough to, simulate that analog sweep. That's the only time MIDI will be good for gain pedals, really.
Yeah.
It's useful to have it switching on and off, as per the Pantheon. If you've got it, Pantheon Deluxe, if you've got it in a bigger rig, it's really, really useful. Because, again, for my band rig, I'm using a Black Star MIDI controller, so
Okay.
like a little slimline job, and I'm controlling everything off like one button press. So
Yeah.
Terraform, Metaverse, and my amp channel are all coming off it. Equally, I could have stuck the Pantheon on there. In fact, that's not a bad idea.
Well, when I was playing with cover bands and stuff, that was the one thing I always was trying to get was a better MIDI controller because I needed, to have multitudes of patches where I could just switch without having to turn off 7 different pedals or have to reach down and go to a different setting. Especially when I picked up like the Terraform and the Metaverse from you guys, it was like, okay, I have all of these things at my feet now, but now I've got to. I need something to control everything. So that was the big key now. But now that I'm not playing with a bunch of people, I don't really worry about MIDI controller. So
Well, and again, sometimes I wonder if that it's a mistake for me to worry so much about it because actually, if I'd have been more sensible, I could have just gone, I need a clean tone, I need a clean tone with chorus, I need a clean tone with phase, and then I can switch my gain on and off if I'm happy with that clean tone.
Yep.
Instead of making, as I currently have, like 12 different patches to cover 24 songs. And there is a clean tone in there that gets used on like 3 songs and like a clean with chorus that I do the same with. But I'm definitely not efficient. But it was easy to set up because I could just go, right, patch 1 is this,
Yep.
this, and this. Job done. But you can overkill it because actually, again, what I'm really, like my signal chain is really simple. It's Gearbox into Ego 76 into Terraform, and then there's a Metaverse in the loop of my in the effects loop of my amp. So it's a very simple board. You don't really need MIDI that much for that. It's like It's really like no one knows when I'm using a phaser for half of these songs, but it's fun and it looks cool.
well, but you're using a phaser, and it's more for the player at that point, especially in that capacity. I believe when you're playing covers and stuff like that, you're
100%.
you're trying your best to make it as much like the album as you possibly can. You know what I mean? And you can hear those subtle nuances that most people that don't play instruments or don't play in bands won't really pick up on. Unless they hear the song without the phaser or without the delay or with whatever it is, and they're like, "Ooh, something's off about that." They might not be able to put their finger on it, but they'll know something is weird about it.
No, absolutely, and I like to bring my own touch to whatever I play. The conversation started off. It's not about trying to be anybody on stage. I love David Gilmour. I hope to think that some of his repetition of playing his songs has lended itself to some natural elements of my musical palette. But I always try and think of sounds when I'm creating a sound for a cover song that is respectful to the original but has my own touch. So we do a reggae song in it, and I used the Doctor on the Metaverse because that beautiful modulated delay just gave me such a great sound, and that's not like the original at all. I'd like to think my tone's a little better than the original, but that's debatable. But it's the little things like that again, it's why we are mad collectors of gear, I guess.
Yeah. Well, and like you were saying with your board, man, like mine is it's a lot simpler and a lot smaller than I've ever had it before, and it's pretty similar. Gearbox, Metaverse, Gearbox, Terraform, Metaverse, and then I have an AB to switch between my 2 amps.
Yeah, no, I mean that will cover a lot. You might be there's something coming out that you're going to enjoy. So let's just put it like that. But until it comes out, you can't enjoy it. That said, on my other board at the moment, which is my I'm playing at home board, I've still got a Gearbox, still the heart of everything, but I also really enjoy the Plexi Drive Mini. Yeah. I use that a lot for such slightly throatier tone than the gearbox. I mean, you can get crossover. Don't get me wrong. You can make the Pinnacle side of the gearbox sound very similar to the Plexi drive, and vice versa. But I have them set slightly differently, so I get a bit of a throatier, gnarlier sound out of the Plexi, and I've got a regular ego on that. I've got 2 of Brian's prototypes plus our next release, and a little power driver, which my friend at DevTech in this Australia sent me, and another friend just sent me the BK Butler tube driver. Which
I saw that, man.
It's a fantastic pedal. People have been telling me you need to get one for years. I'm like, I know, but it's huge. It's worth it. It's worth being that big. It's such a good pedal. Like, the harmonics on it are so crispy and alive. It's great. It's it's become I'm now thinking of making a completely Floyd board. Just a very simple Floyd board. That's next. So watch that space, I think.
I think the closest thing I had to that, I used to have a bunch of the radial, like the Hot British and the Plexi tubes. And the problem was they all ran off of 18 volts. And back in the day, me being a young, naive kid, I didn't realize that if I got an external power supply that, had, like the one spot I know has like 2 or 3 18-volt outs. So I had this like insane power system with like a power strip actually duct taped under my board to have.
We've all been there.
Yeah. But that is like the one piece of gear, like pedal wise, that I have regretted forever getting rid of those like 3 or 4 pedals, because they were so good. At least from what I remember. Maybe I'll hop on Reverb and order them all again. And put
nostalgia purchase, yes.
Do like my 15-year-old pedal board rig. I think I got a picture of it somewhere.
Oh, nice.
So that might be an idea.
Yeah, no, I've shown Brian some of my early pedal boards, and he laughs. I've got one that was all Boss basically, but all the wrong Boss. It was almost impossible to do, but I did it. I just bought all the cheaper ones. But
I see.
Yeah, no, it was it's early days, but it is interesting. And the interesting thing with the band is how much of a difference it makes putting my amp through my 2x12 in this room, and how the effects sound, and then taking them into the rehearsal studio, sticking it into, essentially an IR through the mixer and front of house speakers, and I use like a regular 4x12 like as a monitor, and like the sound is so different. Again, I've been like, this sounds perfect at home, taking it into the studio and being like, this sounds like hot backside scratchings.
The few times I've jammed with bands or filled in for bands, like I'm still dialing in my mix with the band for that first song. You know what I mean? Because you're not familiar with the room, you're not familiar with, if you're playing with another guitar player, you're not familiar with what their gear is, so you're trying to like find where you're going to sit in that mid-range area. So it's a constant process, but usually you can nail it within that first song or two. In my experience,
I mean, volume up, treble up, let's go. That's that's basically. I already have a reputation for being loud in my band. They're already you need to turn down, you need to turn down a bit more and a bit more, but
typical guitar player right here, right?
Apparently, I mean, I didn't think I was, but apparently I am. So
I don't know why I have never done that. I got yelled at a gig one time. The sound guy told me to turn up.
Oh, really?
He started cracking up. He's like, I think you're the first guitar player I've ever had to say that to. I was like, well, man, I'm just trying to sit well with the band. You know what I mean? And at least from where I was standing in the monitor that I was getting, it sounded great. But apparently in the mix, it wasn't that great. But he came on stage and was just like, hey, man, I've never thought I was ever going to have to say this. Turn your fucking amp up. Like, oh, okay. Oh, will do.
I love that. And at the same time, you've answered the question I was about to ask. Is I can't remember whether I was allowed to swear on this show or not.
Yeah, you're good. You're good.
Okay,
I'll put the explicit thing on there. I mean,
that's fine.
I've thought about it a few times, and I mean, I know that it's probably not the best thing, but it is what it is.
Again, I think it goes to the authenticity thing.
Yeah.
Like, I swear quite a lot normally, and sometimes I find my swearing to be quite funny. Yeah. and some of the very bad things that come out of my mouth make me laugh. So, sometimes it's best to hear them. Sometimes, very much best not to hear them.
Yeah, and to be fair, the majority of the podcasts that I've ever recorded, it is very seldom that I cuss anyway, so it doesn't really matter. But like I said, in normal life, that's just
Fuck it.
Part of the vocabulary.
That's what we would say.
And
Yeah,
at the end,
good.
and at the end of the day, man, like you said, like I'm not really in the business of really making sure I'm doing exactly what other people want me to do. I'm just going to do what I want, and if people happen to like that, that's awesome. If people don't like it, that's awesome too.
Yeah,
You know?
Again, I mean, you're quite a bit younger than me, annoyingly, but it is the privilege of age. Is you're kind of like, I can really just do what I want now. I'm like, no one can tell me it, and it takes a while for it to sink in that that's where you are in life, but it is a lot of fun.
Yeah. Well, and I mean, that's the same with like, I was really worried about when I started doing like YouTube and stuff like that of like, man, how am I going to present myself? How am I going to look like this? I'm not, it's like, dude, I'm just going to do whatever I want now. And they're either going to get views or they're not. And I'm good.
I mean, I still have a bit of it. I don't have much video content out, and certainly not of me playing. Mm-hmm. And I might do some things to change that. And that is getting out of my comfort zone.
Yeah.
So, and I have all of those same thoughts. I'm like, my room needs like a new room. I need to lose 18 stone. all of those things kind of like go from one, and then eventually you go, oh, you're overthinking it. Just get on with it.
Yeah, 100%. There's a handful of things that I've put out here recently that I've like thought about. Oh man, maybe I could do this. Maybe I could do this. It's like, or you could just put the freaking pedal up here and just play. Mm-hmm.
And that is catching eyes, because so generally we don't respond every day to social media messages on every channel because we have limited time and resources. So
yeah.
I will typically look at the Instagram messages over a set period of time, and I'll always try and put them up if I see a good one. And you put so many out recently which use our pedals. Like, I think you featured on probably the last 3 months' stories. So
yeah, I appreciate that.
Well, it's being noticed is what I'm saying. And it's because you're delivering a very easy to watch video. It is the pedal. It is some nice playing. And that's all you need. It doesn't need to be fancy, zooming cameras, clever effects, anything.
Yeah.
Keep it simple, keep it honest, and, as Brian would always say, 3 chords and the truth. So
yeah,
that's it.
I don't 100% agree with the 3 chords and a truth thing, because everybody likes the whittly whittlies, you know what I mean? But
yeah, for sure.
Or maybe just the guitar players like the whittly whittlies. We do it for ourselves.
I mean, again, it was going back to Gilmour. It was really interesting to see how Anna reacted to his playing, because he is virtuosic. There's no doubt about it.
Absolutely.
But he's not a fast guitar player, but that doesn't mean he doesn't drop the odd fast passage in.
Yeah.
And when he does, you can hear the audience kind of like be like, yeah, this guy has it all. But his touch is just sublime. If you haven't heard him live at Pompeii from 2016.
Oh, yeah.
It's such a good album.
Yeah.
It's just like start to finish. I'm like, there isn't a bad moment to this. And I thought that was his peak. And, maybe it was, but I tell you what, this new tour, when he did the new stuff, and he's got his daughter, Romany Gilmour.
Yeah.
And not only is she singing like lead vocals, she, without giving too much away, is one of the backing singers on a very famous Pink Floyd vocal song sung by females with no actual words. That's not giving too much away. Look, it's The Great Gig in the Sky.
Yeah.
And they do a fantastic version. What he does is he wheels out a grand piano, and I think it's Louise Marshall who is the kind of like the bigger voiced backing singer. He's got 3 backing singers plus Romany. She starts playing The Great Gig in the Sky on the piano and singing it herself. And then the other girls, which is the Webb sisters and Romany Gilmour, all join in. And Romany has a very big harmony part. And it's beautifully sung. She's got a beautiful voice. And it's really touching to see a father and a daughter playing music together. I know I sound like a soppy old man, and yes, I have a daughter, so that helps. But it is like you
Yeah.
don't see enough of that. There's none of this kind of like Oasis. Are they going to split up dynamic pricing? Oh, there probably is a bit. There's none of this Morrissey fighting. It's just wholesome, like family entertainment.
Yeah.
And like a lot of people will point to the fact that since Roger Waters left, the lyrics to Pink Floyd and David Gilmour's own songs have been questionable. Some of them are great, and people are just too quick to judge.
Yeah.
Some of the songs, particularly off Rattle That Lock, In Any Tongue, I think was, one of the greatest songs he's ever put out as a solo song. And he does one song off the new album called Scattered, and the solo in it is it's a 3-part solo. It's everything you want. If this is Gilmour's last tour, he's going out with a bang. Let's just put it that way.
Yeah, I've been meaning to do that, and I actually have to drive to Nashville later this evening, so I'm gonna put that on the way down because it's about 50 minutes. So
Perfect. You'll listen.
You know what I mean?
Seriously, listen to the whole album. And again, it's Formula Gil. Yes, there's some middle English lyrics, and at first,
sure,
you might think, "Oh, that's a bit safe," but some of it grows on you and it hooks you. But every song has a Gilmour solo in it that's worth listening to.
Yeah.
And that alone is the entrance. But actually, I think some of the songs are amongst my favourite ever, like Gilmour and Floyd songs. Their cover of of Between 2 Points is amazing. I think that's what it's called. I probably got it wrong because I've been saying lots of things. But
well, I've been talking to a lot of friends and whatnot here recently. A bunch of people that are in the Nashville, northwest Tennessee area. Talking about like when I heard Andy Wood talk about his musical statement, that's really what has been permeating through me ever since I heard that phrase. And it's like I've been trying to like think of like how do you develop that? And I think having a healthy diet of not just what you like, but all music
definitely
is key. You know what I mean? Like, I'll be the first one to tell you, I'm not a massive Pink Floyd fan. I appreciate what David Gilmour and Pink Floyd as a band contributed to that era of rock and the psychedelic rock. And then, getting out into, the tones that he uses just as a guitar player, like so much contribution to music, but I'm also not going to sit and always just listen to Pink Floyd, like I'm going to try to consume music. I've been listening to a lot of like more cinematic stuff here recently.
Oh yeah, what have you been listening to?
A lot of stuff from like I first got into listening to just like the Hans Zimmer stuff, the stuff that he had put.
Did you see the title of the?
I did, and I knew you were going to laugh about that. And that was unintentional.
But he's fantastic. No, but he is fantastic, and it was unintentional. But actually, it just so happens that I've been playing with a pedal where the shimmer made me feel like Hans Zimmer, because I swear to you, the noises you can get are like, this is insane. But yeah, I love cinematic stuff, and I love classical music. And, I listen to like opera when I'm working and piano music because I like to just turn the mood of what I'm doing and get the music to kind of do it. Gilmour and Floyd are an absolute love of mine, but I definitely don't listen to them 24/7.
No.
It would be absolutely insane.
Yeah.
23/7 maybe.
Yeah, there you go. Well, no, and that's one of the problems I started running into, and I became aware of this. I was listening to way too much guitar-based instrumental music. I dove so deep into guys like Andy Wood, solo stuff, Andy Timmons, Steve Morris, like just their solo stuff. You know what I mean?
Which is all great stuff.
Absolutely. Nobody, I don't think anybody would say any different.
No.
But it's very constricting when it comes to the flow of ideas as a musician, for me at least. You know what I mean? Because now I'm sitting here like, okay, I've got to have like a catchy riff followed by like a little bridge that's kind of shreddy, but not too shreddy, and then a melody part that's going to be really nice, and then some stupid, crazy, 200 beat per minute alternate picking solo. You know what I mean? Like for some reason, that's what I had in my mind. But now that I'm listening to more classical pieces, listening to more cinematic pieces, I'm listening to more of like how the movement of the chords and harmony are interacting with each other and how that's what's really creating that emotional bond between the listener and the music. You know what I
And
mean?
again, going back to the kind of musical statement, one of the phrases I think of every time I'm in a practice situation is, music is X% work, but it is X% attitude. It
Yeah.
is, the mood you want to convey through your music. And once you get past a certain stage of technical mastery, and it doesn't have to be 200 BPM Widley
No,
solos
no.
mastery, it could just be, I know 5 chords, which is enough to get by on. Then you have to put yourself into it. Otherwise, it is just repetition. But equally, there's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with just playing Andy Wood for a year, because you will pick up some tricks like that you never realized
Oh, yeah.
just by playing it. But you've also got to think about who are the influences of these people,
Right.
and who are the influences of their influences. And like, if you took Andy, you've obviously got the huge bluegrass and kind of Nashville scene influence, but you've also got the sort of Van Halen, and then you think Van Halen was influenced by your Hendrixes and your Claptons, and so the whole rock family tree is important. And I think you can never discount anybody as long as their music isn't just really stupid, and there is a lot
Sure.
of stupid music out there. But
Yeah.
I love it all. I there isn't an era of modern music and classical music that I couldn't get something from. And I think that's and it's all about finding melodies and harmonies and those magical moments for sure.
Yeah, I was. So I'm still teaching at a local mom and pop shop, and I have a student that I've had for about a year and a half now. He is going to be. He's already is a phenomenal guitar player, but he is
Amazing.
going to be. He's going to be somebody if he sticks with it. I know it. I can just feel it. And that was one of the conversations we had. We started doing, instead of a 30-minute lesson, an hour-long lesson about 2 or 3 weeks ago. And that's one of the biggest things. Like, we're going to talk about the nerdy theory stuff for about 30 minutes, and then we're gonna jam for the next 30 minutes. We're going to talk about like what we're doing as we're talking back and forth with the instruments and how we're creating these passages. And he started coming up with these chord progressions that, on paper, or if you were to say it to somebody, it's like, ah, man, that doesn't make sense. You know what I mean? But the way that he was playing them and moving different notes to get to that next chord, harmonizing it, like he was doing it without knowing that's what he was doing, but he was just doing it off of his feel and how he was
I
playing.
hate him already. He
For
sounds
real.
like a,
Yeah, I know.
But that's beautiful, and the fact that you're able to be part of that journey is wonderful, because your role as a teacher is to inspire, simply to inspire them to learn more than you're able to ever teach. That's
Yeah.
really the role of it. It's not to like verbatim learn, it's to kind of give them the tools to learn. So that's utterly fantastic.
Well, I think that's one of those weird things that we live in right now, because we have everything at our fingertips as far as information goes. So, like if I want to go learn a solo note for note, I can get on YouTube and I can find somebody to show me a solo note for note. One of the craziest things happened with that kid, and this is how I know he's going to be great, is that he came into a lesson one time and he started playing Cowboys from Hell from Pantera. And I was like,
Right.
dude, okay, cool. That's awesome. That's really good right hand stuff you got going on there too. And then I was like, so, where'd you look up this stuff at? I made an assumption, which I shouldn't have. And he's like, oh, I was just listening to the track. And I was like, dude, okay, cool. So you're like 13 years old and you decided just to listen to the track and then start working it out yourself. Yeah. Keep doing that.
Yeah, 100%. I've become quite lazy. Well, lazy in one way. I mean, sight reading has become a big thing for me, because as I've got older, memorizing songs has just become harder and harder.
Sure.
And I've got 24 memorized for my band. It's pushed out 6 that I had memorized for just jamming at home with.
Right.
So being able to sight read, even if I can't sight read at full speed all the time, I could still look at a piece of music and be like, oh yeah, that's how that's played, and kind of play it back. So that's a real skill. But what I've noticed a lot more recently is I've been listening to songs and thinking, oh, I like that little part there. And then just letting my hand go, where would that be? And within 3 positions, it will find it.
Oh,
It'll
yeah.
be like, it's not here. Oh, then no, it's not here. there it is. And like having that, like, a thought in my head translate perfectly each time has been a beautiful experience, because I've always been really nervous of my ear to hand transcription. I'm nowhere
Sure.
near as good
Oh,
as
absolutely.
a professional player, so even the like minor victories mean a lot to me, and I've pulled a few off and I've been like, huh, you actually do know where the notes are on this piece of wood that you hold in your hand for hours of every day. I don't know where the notes are. I still have to count them sometimes.
I've just now gotten to the point where I feel somewhat comfortable with that. It's kind of convenient, but it also like I don't trust myself yet
No,
either.
and I guess I'm the sort of almost the reverse there. I'm definitely there. I know what every note is, but I don't trust myself. So
Yeah.
I look at them and think about them. But then when I point to a note and say, "What is that?" I'm like, "Well, that's that," and I'm like, "Oh yeah, it is that." But
Yeah.
again, I'm old and I'm not as disciplined as I should be. But trying to.
Hey, I'm gonna thank you because you are the reason why I bought this. The morning coffee from
Alex
Alex
Rockwell.
Rockwell. Oh my goodness, has been a game changer for me.
Yeah, so you've probably got more out of it than I have, because I gave up with it because work became crazy
I get
after a
it.
few months, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
But I still go back to it from time to time. And obviously, the first 7 or 8 exercises are all easy scales to remember. So I will play those myself in each position. But it's funny you mention it, because I've been thinking to myself, I've got a bit more time in the mornings now. Time to go back to that morning coffee book. It's a great book. And I think the other one's called Extra Cream. I forget.
I
But
think cream and sugar.
Cream
Yeah.
and Sugar, that's it. I haven't worked my way through that very much. But no, the Morning Coffee book by Alex Rockwell is fantastic. I'm glad
Yeah.
you got into that, because you're the exact right sort of person, because you've got discipline and a brain, and I only
I
have one of those things
I
at any one
I
time.
I halfway agree with you on that because those are both a little shoddy from time to time, to say the very least. But no, I can't remember what it was because I remember you guys talking about it on the podcast with Brian and Blake, but I couldn't remember what it was for the longest time. And then of course I couldn't find the episode, and then I was just scrolling through Instagram, and one of Alex's sponsored little whatever ads came up on Instagram, and I was like, okay, that name sounds really familiar. Clicked on the link, and I was like, yes, finally, I found it. I found it.
Should have just asked, dude, because I would have. I've told lots of people about that, but yeah,
Yeah.
it's a great little exercise.
Well, it was one of those things, and that's the other thing too. And I might be, dumb for doing this, but like even at the woodshed, man, like I know people are working and I don't want to bother them. You know what I mean? Like I know I wouldn't be, but just in my head, I feel like I don't want to get step on anybody's toes. You know what I mean? So that I appreciate it. That's the thing. But I was just happy I found it. Whether it's the cosmic, the universe just was like, here you go,
Anytime
Greg.
you want to ask me, I'll definitely give you those sort of infos. But no, I get it, man. I get it. And it is a great book, and I recommend anyone that's not got it. It's like only $5 or something.
Yeah.
It's worth going out and buying, supporting this dude, because he's put it together in a really easy to follow fashion. Whether or not you'll ever be able to do them before your morning coffee, which is kind of what the implication is, it should take you as long as a morning coffee. Yeah, if you're grade 8 on a guitar. But if you want like a 30 to 40 minute exercise, it's great. It will take you through. I think it probably might take you a little bit longer than that. I struggle to do the whole lot in one go as well. I'll be honest. I tend to do it in two halves.
Yeah.
I'll like get through to one of the arpeggios and be like, right, my head is done in with these ninths or 11ths or whatever. I'm taking a break, and then I'll come back to it. But it's great to hear those musical intervals, because as a guitarist, we don't think enough about those intervals.
Yeah, exactly.
So again, comes back to the whole finding melodies and looking at other music, because you can hear classical music in all of those intervals immediately, and you're like, oh, now I get it. But if you don't ever try that, you're just like, I've got a pentatonic scale and I'll play it.
Well, and that's the hardest thing. When I first got that kid, that's why I brought it up. That kid that I'm teaching, like he knew like box one of minor pentatonic, but he had no idea how to actually like use it.
Yeah.
And then he was always, if we would ever like, hey, we're going to jam for like 10 minutes and see what you can do, he would just stay in that box, and it would just be ascending, descending, ascending, descending. It's like, okay, that's cool. That's a good starting point, man. But like, you're listening to guys. He's a really big fan of, the Randy Rhoads and Dimebag
Right.
Darrell and stuff like that. So he really likes the groove shred sort of guitar player,
Yeah.
And that was one of the things I was telling him, like, dude, if we listen to a lot of these tracks, like they're using that shape in a context where they're pulling specific licks and bends out of those shapes. Now you just got to think about, like, okay, let's get into the nerdy theory side of things, like you were talking about. Let's talk about these intervals. Let's talk about the spacing that we're going to have between these notes. And dude, now we can just fly over the fretboard.
Yeah. And literally, I'm still not as connected as I should be, but I think I'm close. I think I'm close to mastering level 1 guitar. That moment where you think, yeah, I can just play from here to there without thinking. I can busk it. Like, I could probably put it off in front of most people and they'd be like,
Sure.
yeah, he can play. But in my mind, it's nowhere near as good as like when I watch my guitar teacher play or other pros.
Yeah.
But I'm getting there, and I'm getting there without trying because I'm just continually playing other music. And I think there's a lot to be said for just muscle memory and continually playing and listening to all sorts of different music.
Yeah, there definitely is, man. That's the biggest thing. I need to come up with a video. I'm trying to find of like 5 good reasons of why, like how to develop that musical statement, and the musical diet is definitely one of them for sure. So I don't know. Like it's one of those phrases that just really hit me hard, and I can't get it out of my head. So I'm sorry,
But
listeners. I probably sound like a broken record, but
no. I think it's brilliant because I think that's part of what kind of drives any artist.
yeah,
Is honing in on something and it kind of firing the imagination. And if that's fired your imagination to think about it and want to do it, then something interesting will come out of it.
Oh, for
Hopefully
sure.
good, but definitely interesting.
Yeah, we'll call it a something right now. Whether that's
Yeah,
good,
sure.
bad, and different, that doesn't really matter right now.
But you go back to the film music, like sometimes for a bit of fun, I'll load up Pro Tools and I'll write some classically themed film music. It normally starts off as my attempt to recreate the Imperial March from Star
I
Wars.
was about to say, yeah.
Yeah, I'll do that. But then I'll be like, oh, these strings sound so good. Oh, I'll make this chord. And before I know it, I've created like some haunting melody. And I'm like, yes, it never goes anywhere, but it's a fun exercise. Definitely a fun exercise. So, and, again, on the film stuff, playing some, is it Ennio Morricone who did all the spaghetti western music?
That sounds right. I don't know for
I
sure.
think
though.
so. I'm just going to check in my thingy. Like, I don't know whether you're familiar with the. Yeah, it is. Yeah. Like any of the kind of Clint Eastwood film music,
Yeah.
right? Some of it is brilliant. Like some of the guitar parts. Is it a few dollars more or a fistful of dollars? I forget. One of them has just got the greatest little guitar parts in it. And learning some of that stuff is also a lot of fun. So, I'm with you, dude. I love the film music. I learned how to play Batman, the original Batman theme on the guitar. It's
Nice.
really, really easy, but it's a great little exercise. I call it a 5-second riff because it's like one of those where I looked at it, I was like, yeah, now I can play it. But it's just a lot of fun. The James Bond chord, a great chord to pull out every now and then.
Yeah.
No, good stuff, man. Good stuff.
Absolutely. Well, Richard, I think we're about at time here for this episode, man. So, what's on the horizon we can talk about? I know you kind of already talked about a few things that, you guys have some stuff coming out through Wampler and stuff like that, but is there anything you haven't discussed that you got on the horizon for the rest of the year?
Well, I am working on a limited edition fuzz pedal. I have to, basically, because everybody has said if you bring out a British King of Fuzz pedal, it won't be called that because I think a certain person might not be happy at that name, but including my king. But either way, I've got some ideas. I've got a circuit that I'm breadboarding at the moment and just doing some modifications to. I've bought enough components to make a very early run, so I think my plan will be I'll do a very limited hand-built entirely by me run.
Nice.
If they all sell, then I'll use the proceeds of that to probably build, let's say, I don't know, 100, 200, just a small number.
Yeah, small
And
batch just to.
and I've got a couple of friends who are handy with soldering irons. So I think, again, the idea will be to make it a quality hand soldered. I won't be able to go to the levels of someone like Marcus Reeves, who does those
Sure.
beautiful P2P things. But I want to make something high quality. It'll be a bit different, and it won't be a bit different at the same time. So that's happening. I am working on some courses, which will hopefully materialize on a familiar guitar course website at some point. They're not going to be me building pedals or anything like that, but probably showing you some advanced features with some pedals. There might be some building and constructing and finishing bits on there, but there's certainly, I want to put some courses out over the next year or so. There is a guitar company I'm working with, Palm Bay Guitars, that is about to launch, and when that launches, that's going to be phenomenal, especially as he's going to build me a custom guitar, which I've never had made.
Yeah, hearing that on the podcast, I was really excited just for you guys. So I can't wait for those to.
Yeah, and honestly, I've got like a prototype.
Yeah.
I haven't got it here, and I wish I could show it to you. I mean, it looks gaudy as hell. It's got EMG pickups, and the quality of it's so good. Like, it's better than a lot of Fenders I've bought for similar money.
Nice.
And I am a Fender guy, so yeah, plenty going on. But yeah, definitely the next thing to look out for will be from Wampler. The new pedals will hopefully be launching in about a month's time. When's this going out? Is this going out soon?
Let's see, 2 weeks from now. I'd have to double check. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So probably in 2 or 3 weeks after this comes out, we'll have some new pedals out.
There you go. Yeah.
There you go.
Well, Richard, dude, I appreciate you taking the time. I mean, like I said, third time's a charm, I suppose,
100%. Really enjoyed it. Awesome to talk as ever. And thanks for having me on, dude.
Absolutely, man. Well, for Richard and for all of you guys, we'll check you guys next week on Man the Helm podcast.